Hi, I'm Rachel Hyman-Sisco. My maiden name is Hyman-Sisco is my married name, in case you're curious. And I'm running for President of the United States 2028. And I'm doing it because I'm not happy with the current administration. And I'm probably one of the few crazy people that's of age to run for president. And I want to try and do it without asking for people for money. So I will be basing solely on what people subscribe, but I'm not taking money from corporations. That is a mess. Walmart, Target, all those places. I shopped there, but now it's not politically correct to do that. I figure if I don't take money from corporations, no one will have anybody to boycott, and they can shop wherever in the heck they feel they could. We don't have to have blackout dates or anything. I understand the purpose of them now, but I'm just saying I'm going to try and do this purely through media and hopefully interviews. But today I have invited my husband, Tom Sisco, I get a lot of my information and my ideas from him, and we bounce things back and forth. I think he's important for you guys to see the discussions we have and how we come to the ideas that I come on and say, hey, I could do a lot on my own. I see a lot of injustice in the world. He's more technical and can give us actual numbers. So today we were having a discussion about Elon Musk and how much money he makes. Now, according to the public metrics, Tom, how much does he make?
According to, so his net worth.
But while he's looking at that, net worth does not mean cash flow. That's probably his cars, his house, planes, trains, automobiles. That's its net worth. I don't know what his actual cash flow is, but
yeah, according to this, according to Forbes, it is, as of December 10th, 2025, it is $4.92.2 billion.
And how many people are in the world?
A population of the world is 8.23 billion people.
Okay. And I'm guessing that Bezos and Bill Gates and other people that we're talking about, you guys know there's 13 families that are running the world or whatever, and the rest of us are getting laid behind. But with all that money, like I said, net worth is much different than cash flow, but we get charged property tax on, so we're basically getting charged for our house, our cars, anything that's property. So he would get taxed on that too. So net worth is important to know about. It's also would be hard to figure out what stuff is if he's got hidden bank accounts or whatever. So you don't really know what someone's making, but we know that's the number. So I feel that it's important to point out that with this whole SNAP benefits, and people want to take SNAP benefits away from people, or at the very least know what they're spending that money on. Are they spending that money on Dr. Pepper and a birthday cake? And how is that fair to the taxpayers if they're spending money not the way they want to? They don't like what's on their grocery list. I think that's awful. I think that's an awful thing to even consider. But we watch these billionaires, whatever, go out and buy bigger yachts and fancier cars. Some of them stay pretty low key, but it's so hard. It's so hard to watch this. We talk about people who are hoarders. They hoard things they think are going to be worth money. They collect things. Or they don't want to let go of, say, a couch because their parents owned it, but they already had a couch, but they can't let go sentimentally. And some hoarding starts out really innocently, such as they can't take the garbage out anymore. They don't want to ask anyone for help. And then they're embarrassed to ask for help when they need to ask for help. And it just kind of snowballs. Nothing against hoarding. But this guy, the people who have this much money are hoarding it. hoarding. And that money means that the money goes into them and they do not put it back into the economy. Okay? So what we know about the economy is you have to be spending money in order for it to go back out to people so they can feed their kids, earn money, feed the kids, places don't shut down. Hoarding money is not great. Now, I am all for people doing well and becoming billionaires and everything, but there is such a start thing. And I don't have a problem with him being smart enough and well liked enough to make this kind of money. That's not my problem. My problem is that he wants a tax break. He wants a tax break. He doesn't have to pay the full amount of what he owes, because who wants to give out more money than what they have, or what they? No one wants to give even $1 to a charity at the store. Yeah, I'm being sarcastic, but he could afford to do a lot of good with that. And those taxes go to people's medical stuff. It goes to schools and parks and stuff like that. And why is he holding on to it? He's holding on to it for what reason? You can't take it with you when you die. I don't understand the game. Is it the person with the most toys wins? What do you win? A made-up gold medal? What do you win? Tom, you want to shine some light on this?
Well, there's a lot there, right? We'd have to get into the psyche of Elon, or just, you could say, it doesn't need to be Elon specifically, but any ultra-wealthy person, and you wonder what their motivation is. Now, in Elon's case, I think he was a member of an aristocratic family. I would assume that gives you some kind of entitlement because you were born into privilege in South Africa. But with Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, he earned all of that money by being extremely savvy and scrappy. And so it's a different motivation. But you could say, for people who are motivated, and this is, of course, the big capitalist dream of America, is that the reason you don't make money or you're not successful is because you weren't ambitious enough, which is ridiculous because there's only so many opportunities in the world, and there's only so much time in
and
the
it
frame.
takes money to make money.
It takes money to make money. You need to be at the right place at the right time. You need to blah, blah, blah.
You have to know the right people.
You need to know the right people. In Bezos's situation, he happened to see a need real early in the age of the internet, and essentially just started a warehousing business for books to compete with bookstores, and then grew the business from there.
But you have to pay for that warehouse.
He did, sure.
And then you have to pay. So you're born on whatever happens.
So
you're on uneven.
Sure. And then the Rockefellers, with all of the wealth that was generated by owning all United States gasoline or gasoline manufacturing and Standard Oil and everything. You don't even associate Rockefeller with essentially an oil baron, but that's where all the money came from.
And all for generational wealth and passing that wealth down.
Sure.
Absolutely.
But
let's question what they're spending it on.
The question is, here's the thing, with regards to Elon or Bezos, they don't seem to have a very strong family dynamic.
Elon's got how many kids?
Yeah, but we don't know, like, to the extent of...
I'm hoping he pays child support.
He could afford it.
He could afford it, but we don't know. We didn't look that up.
So here's the thing, right? In the past, like with very wealthy people, they did have a very clear line of succession, family involvement. With the oil barons, a lot of those families did essentially keep the wealth within the family, right? But essentially our tech bros don't seem to have any type of familial loyalty that I can tell beyond the company itself. So does that mean that these guys, it's keep the company alive at all costs? And since companies can't die of old age, They might pass into irrelevancy or get swooped up by somebody else, but they don't have an age limit. They can outlast any person. So the question is that investment good for the company? Is that reinvestment good for society, that a company essentially can't die or won't die?
And at what cost do these people make the money? Don't get me wrong, I'm pro energy sources, but we also have to be responsible how we source that energy. And let's go back to the Rockefellers, and I'm pretty sure they didn't know this back then, but oil and what they're doing and digging is destroying the environment. And we had that thing with Exxon where the oil went into the ocean. If you don't take care of how you produce things, if you're going to be a millionaire and you're going to produce something, it better not be at somebody else's expense, the land's expense, the ocean's expense. We have screwed up so bad. We have made this so bad. And I think it's great that he came up with the idea of electric cars. But there's a lot of problems with them. But this is the thing, and you can fix problems later on down the line. But this is the thing. How expensive is it to recycle that battery? And can you recycle that battery? You can't, can you?
That is a challenge.
So getting an electric car, but there's a battery that's toxic that's going into landfills. Yeah. And they worry about us throwing double A's in the garbage. So how are those?
It is, so essentially our modern society lifestyle is not sustainable. Long term, it is not. So any technological solution is essentially reforming the same unsustainability. The best we can do to essentially retain our perception or our expectation of a product, right? Because if we live in a society that has consumerism, and the consumerism requires a product to be consumed or sold or created, you have to take that into account. So how can we change our approach to use of things? I think that COVID was a great indicator that we can do a pivot as a society, because prior to that, it seemed like consumerism was unending and unfailing,
and we didn't know how we
and
could
it was
live
like
without it.
More and more, and that was the only thing. But now with AI, it's like redefining what consumerism is, what employment is, like the whole concept of what a person does on a day-to-day basis. Like, how do they get paid? How do they make money? It seems like a lot of the quote-unquote white-collar jobs are essentially getting replaced by AI. It seems like the only real jobs would be things that robots aren't good at yet, like trades, anything that would require like physical labor, can't be automated. Things like that seem to be stickier, quote-unquote boring jobs, right? But we have spent the last however many decades in the internet age kind of poo-pooing essentially the backbone of like how everything is actually built. Once we are good at 3D printing houses, then maybe that will be a different story. But it seems like that's a way off, but that's actually that could be an interesting pivot for technologists to do. I know that you essentially have a gantry crane and you use a filament, just essentially scale up how a 3D printer works, scale it up to house size, and you can essentially 3D print a house already.
That sounds crazy.
It does sound crazy, but it's possible. You build the outline, the framework, and all that stuff out of essentially concrete soft serve, I would say.
I could give you the answer. I could give you that answer to how we could be sustainable. Do you want that answer?
No.
You don't.
Next week's episode.
No, come on.
Yeah, okay, fine.
the natives, indigenous.
Oh yeah, other societies.
They had it down. They were making things out of, I hope I don't misspeak, clay and whatever. And they grew their own food. They caught their own food. Nothing went to waste. They made their own clothes from animal skins. And yes, that sounds terrible to the vegans out there, but it was less waste for the animals than what we're doing right now. And there's a lot of animal cruelty that is happening right now, where back in the days probably was animal cruelty too, but they respected nature more and they respected the things around it. And when you start building, and everyone has to have a house, I'm not saying having a house is bad, but I'm saying is that they had it down and the water was clean. I've screwed up so badly. And it's taken a long time for us to learn, I feel like, this lesson, but they weren't just going around in teepees. They had very intricate societies. The last thing, these guys were savages. And just because you call someone something doesn't make it true. I'm not saying everything was perfect, but at what cost do we want to keep going with technology? I think we're at the point where it's like, hey, wait a second. We're all being spied on. We're all being listened to. I know the government's listening to this and they're probably going, oh my God, she's against the administration. We better go knock on her door. I'll have fun with that because I'm crazy and I don't know what would happen. They don't want to know what would happen. I have no idea how I would react. But the point is we should be taking a page out of the ancestors' history books. And I'm clearly white, and a lot of people think that I'm privileged. But think about this. Yeah, I was born in a nice area, suburbs, good school district, and just because it's a good school district doesn't mean the kids are safe to be around. That makes me so mad that they mark these things 8s, but kids are getting beat up and raped and in the school halls, and the teachers are afraid to touch them. So just because it says it's a good school district, it really depends on who's going to the school at that time. That's enough. But my parents made enough money and they didn't live fancy. They had one car, rode the bus. My parents didn't buy clothes for themselves. They traveled. They went and saw their family in New York, Missouri, Florida. That's where they spent their money. And they had a good nest egg. That's what they did. They just saved it for the next generation. My mom has passed and she left behind her retirement fund. So when things go screwy with me or my kids, car goes out. Because what ended up happening to me was very different than what my mom was doing. I ended up a single mom, 4 kids, two baby daddies that one was on drugs and didn't come visit the kids except for maybe on Sundays, and that was it. And then I had an ex-husband it was evil. It was really evil, and I'm sure a lot of you women understand this. It got really bad. But I was on food stamps, Section 8, energy assistance, all that stuff. I relied on that heavily. And I was able to stay in that same town that I grew up in, where you have to be either really rich or really poor to survive. You have to be on all kinds of assistance. $70,000 was the poverty level for a family of 5. Who makes that kind of money? Guess what? Bellevue is in Washington. This is where a lot of the tech bros, Seahawks, Bill Gates, all these guys live. So one side of the freeway are these mansions, and then there's middle class, and then there's the poor people. And it's fine, it's great. But middle class is the one that suffers. Middle class is the one that really suffers because they don't qualify for benefits and they don't have enough money to pay for everything they need to. But my mom left me, and I hated asking for it, but money when my car would go down or whatever. I ended up, when my youngest was 14, I ended up marrying a guy who was able to take me and my 4 children on, and comfortably, but still struggle, because now we have different expenses. We're not on Section 8 anymore, not on food stamps, not on energy assistance, but I see those people. And I bought birthday cakes for my kids. And I bought candy for presents for birthdays so they could go to a birthday party with something to hand another kid. That is the right thing to do. And they got rid of, what was it? They got rid of buttercream, actual buttercream frosting in the bakeries in our county because it had trans fat. Guess what? You got rid of buttercream. What do you think white frosting is? It's Crisco and powdered sugar. You're eating straight up lard. So that's dumb. So a lot of misinformation. If it doesn't affect you,
Probably a politician decided to do that instead of a nutritionist.
Oh, I'm sure a nutritionist came. Okay, I love Michelle Obama, but she got into this real nutrition craze, and she got this thing where we had to have, like, for our food at school, they had to be on wheat buns instead of white. Guess what wheat has in it that white doesn't? Shit ton of gluten. When they bleach out that flour, the gluten goes away. The white flour, even though it doesn't have the vitamins and minerals that maybe wheat bread does, the gluten. So there's a lot of kids that are having diarrhea at the school. Everyone's body takes on a different diet, and I don't feel like the government should be regulating what people put in their mouth, unless we're talking pesticides, herbicides. Can I just do this really quick?
Sure.
CIDE is the ending of pesticide, herbicide, suicide, homicide. It means death. They used to use vinegar to keep the pests away. If you have to wear gloves and a mask to spread an herbicide or pesticide, you don't want people putting that in their mouth and washing it off. Strawberries. They put pesticides on those, it just absorbs into. It's not on top anymore, it's inside. And if those berries weren't treated, they'd be great for antioxidants and cancer. They have cancer, vitamin C, all sorts of things. So you try to eat right, but you're also getting poisoned at the same time, slowly. And then they wonder why we have cancer issues. And then I was looking up cancer last night. Chemo alone per month without insurance is $1,000 to $25,000 a month for chemo. That doesn't include radiation, which is a similar cost, surgery, whatever. And then insurance might cover 20%, depending on your insurance, 10 to 20%. That is a huge chunk of money. So that's why I really think universal health care would come in. Because even if we couldn't make your employers pay you more or control the price of eggs, because you can't. That's a lie. Prices depend on supply and demand. And the price of eggs, I think, reflected the bird flu. There was a lot of animals a lot of birds, a lot of chickens that were contaminated, and they keep these chickens in these very small quarters. So it's no wonder it's contagious. It's not there's just one that's isolated from the others. And so if you're wondering, do you want to buy cheaper eggs at the risk of getting this? There's got to be stricter protocol for how animals are treated, because the disease wouldn't be so rampant. But if people are going to ask me, because I see the SNAP people, I see that very clearly. So I'm associating it with myself. Oh, and let's go back to white privilege. So you're not always privileged, and white men aren't always privileged either. They could be widowed, they could be the single parent, and it's harder for them to get benefits, even when this guy's on the up and he's just trying to do the right thing. There are guys out there like that, and I have met a few, but to ask me where I'm going to spend $100 in my grocery. When a millionaire or billionaire, trillionaire, whatever, they're asking for a tax break. A tax break. They don't want to have to feed people, whatever. The government needs to get their fingers out of a lot of these pies.
Or at least be more coherent. I think that's part of the problem, is it's just coherence.
I think they want to play expert.
Sure.
I think they want to play, I'm in a position of power. I'm a doctor now. I know what's best for you. And the abortion thing, you guys have been so misled. Birth control, you have been so misled on what the pills actually do. A lot of pills cross over. Some of those pills are anti-cancer also. It's terrible. I had to have birth control pills, and I wasn't having sex at the time when I was 14. I had an irregular period. It wouldn't stop. I had like my period for 3 weeks on, 1 week off, and it was a disaster. And it hurt so much I had to stay home sometimes. But they had a birth control pill. You had 3 weeks. And that's what the birth control pills, it regulates your period. And because it regulates your period, it can also help with birth control. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but birth control does a lot. But it does not protect you against disease, sexually transmitted disease. That's what condoms are for. And it's just these things that they're promoting, nutrition, whatever, they haven't gone to school for that. Maybe like Obama, he went to school for being a lawyer. So I just think we need to stop getting our fingers in pies. And guess what? There is no college requirement to be president. You could be some dumbass housewife who's raised kids, grandkids. I know stuff. Just because you are a mom doesn't mean you didn't learn anything in your life. You just chose to go the mom route because maybe you were forced into it. Maybe that's what you wanted to do. But a lot of my friends were really excelled, but they chose to be moms. So I don't know. So I think it's okay to sit there and go, if you guys are going to ask me how I spend my money, you better be prepared to show me what you make. And hey kids, I know you think all us old people were too old to be president, but you're too young to be president. You have to be 35. So I'm 56 right now. So that's still younger than a lot of people. And I do think that we could help that out with a lower voting age. Because if you kids vote, if you put in a law to be voted on and not wait for us to figure it out, you guys have a lot of power with the voting. Technically, the president is supposed to serve you and listen to what you want. That's how it's supposed to be.
According to marketing, right, the most powerful demographic in the world is like the youth. Those are the people who do all of the trends, who do all of the everything. But our politics do not reflect like corporate America or any quote unquote trending topic, which is weird, right? Is that a vestige of the old time? Was marketing always like the youth was the only demographic that mattered? That would be an interesting thing to find out, like, in history.
It's just the youth that matters. There's a bunch of people out there.
But the primary
and they have to live here too.
The primary demographic for all marketing is based on young people.
But we have to make sure that everyone gets what they need. And that's where the taxes come in. Now, check this out, you guys. We wouldn't have to worry about so much financial strain if we had universal health care and free education. If we did that and we made health care a right, and with all the cancer, because we've destroyed the environment with bombs and pesticides and herbicides, and now so many people have cancer at our hand, at the country's hand, You have to have health care to stay alive. You have to. If you don't have health care and you have cancer and there's no doctor to help you because you can't afford it,
I'm dead.
You're dead.
But you probably wouldn't even know you had cancer. You'd just be dead.
And sometimes
at some point you're
the
like,
treatment
I can't move,
is worse than the illness.
Yep.
And the treatment can kill you too. So you got to figure out. Now that's a risk too. So I don't think the government should do any more interference with what you can and can't do with your body.
I think maybe a better approach would be not a fully hands-off, but more like a structural. So what the government would be good for, I believe the government is good at infrastructure, so like roads.
Yes.
That's very important, because that used to be private. Roads used to be like a private thing. Like the neighborhood or whoever lived next door were the person or the people that were responsible for maintaining essentially their road. Like how we mow our front lawn. Imagine having to also do all the road maintenance. It would be insane. But that's exactly what was expected in the olden days.
Yeah.
And it made a lot of sense for Public Works to take that over, because at least there would be some kind of standard, because in the beginning there was nothing. It was the railroads were a private industry and still are, but like that was standardized. And actually there was a growing pain on that, because every single railroad company did different standards. And then they eventually came up with a national standard. But like in between cities, there was no network of highways that we appreciate now. But like in the beginning, it was railroads between all the big cities, or all the cities, and then maybe wagon trails between those cities as well. But if you wanted to get from point A to point B in a reasonable time, you took the train.
Yeah. And I think,
and also cargo, took the train.
Right.
I mean, it was like, that was how it was.
And so agreeing with that and going another step forward, so planes, isn't it true planes cause the most amount of pollution out of planes, trains, automobiles?
Yes. So if you think about what I think is carbon output, I think is
emissions.
Yeah, carbon emissions. Aircraft is the least efficient, but also the fastest. It's also the most direct. It can literally fly from point A to point B in a straight line.
Yes.
So it's going to be the least amount of miles moved versus a road, which is going to be winding around mountains and all the other boring crap and physical surface related problems. The plane could just fly over that. But you are correct, to keep an aircraft aloft requires an incredible amount of energy, and then therefore an incredible amount of pollution. Actually,
so why can't planes be electric like cars?
They can, but the batteries are too heavy. So this is the problem, right? And they're working on it. But you can do short flight, like a turboprop is a great candidate for an electrification, right? Because a turboprop in the aircraft world is going to be a short flight, regional airport to maybe a hub in a slightly larger area. I'm going to say within a few hundred miles, maybe more, 200-300 mile range.
Let me go back.
You could use an aircraft to do that.
Let me go backwards, because I'm going to finish my thought on privilege, and then I'm going to catch right back up to you. So we're talking about privilege of white people, and everyone has their own experience, and white women get killed and raped and murdered and forgotten about. So we're getting it too. This is across the board. Crime does not necessarily discriminate. Demographics are different in each area. In Seattle, rape is prevalent. That is their thing. And it's white women that are the target. Moved out to Missouri, St. Louis, it's murder, but it's murder between black people. So I'm safer in St. Louis than I am in Seattle, even though St. Louis is one of the most dangerous things. Now, if you put black people in Seattle, they're going to be safer, but they're going to be surrounded by a bunch of white people. Because originally, black people weren't allowed.
In Oregon, that is true. Until the 1970s, black people were not allowed to own land.
Yeah.
It was insane. It was terribly racist. Oregon has spent a lot of effort trying to fix that, but for a very long time, it was, I'm not going to say to the extent of Idaho, but it was similar to Idaho's approach. Idaho still has, I don't know what they've abolished, but it seems whiteness is very prevalent in Idaho still. It's also, I don't know if black people who want to go there.
I'm not saying like Oregon or Seattle or whatever are prejudiced. They just don't have that demographic, and it goes back. Yeah,
there's a much larger amount of Asian population in Washington.
Yeah.
Just from the geographic location.
No one bothers the Asians.
If you go due west from Seattle, straight across the Pacific Ocean, you hit Japan. So,
close.
So it is, there's a big ocean, but it's still right across the way if you're flying straight. So it is the first spot. So I'm sure that has an influence just because we're the closest point.
Let me finish my thought on privilege. So I see a lot of stuff from the Native Americans and oppressed groups. I feel like the Mexican people are the most oppressed right now, right at this minute. I know it takes turns. Jewish people are oppressed. Black people are oppressed. Mexican, it's not one thing. But let me finish my thought on privilege. My thought on privilege is, think about it. This is to all the people who aren't white. Think about it. If we're so privileged, why don't we have the education? They lied to us. They lied to us about Thanksgiving. Even on the Snoopy Thanksgiving, it's about sharing and peace and everything. How would we have even thought that was a thing? And now we have these traditions and we can't give them up because that's when we see our family. That's when we have the best food. That's when everyone comes together.
I think it's important to acknowledge that what we were taught in school isn't necessarily the full picture.
Exactly.
And it is very disturbing that
we were lied to.
That the Department of Education allowed that to happen.
Yes.
So, in a way,
and you can't
dismantling the DOE is not necessarily terrible because a lot of the mandated stuff was extremely pro-colonist, pro-white, pro-stuff. A lot of that crap got involved. A lot of, especially when we started standardized testing, I was in the generation right before standardized testing really kicked in. They were kicking the idea around for a few years while I was in school, and a lot of the teachers were like, oh God, this thing's coming. I think they started implementing the standardized testing in 2000 or something.
Don't get me started on that.
So standardized testing seems like it's now you train to the test. Conceptually, it's nice that everything is on a standard, which is great for corporate America. But now we've essentially trained a ton of corporate drones in potentially outmoded thinking. When I was going to school, our teachers and our school districts were fairly autonomous in what they could cover. There was probably basic like tent poles, subjects like math, writing, all of those things, and proximate. But it was like more of a generic thing, but each individual teacher seemed to have they were empowered to cover the subjects in their own way. But I don't know, because I was a student at the time, I didn't know exactly how involved the districts were with the classroom instruction.
This is how racism evolves.
Yeah.
You're being told by one person, someone that is empowered, your teacher, whatever. And you can't fault the teachers because the teachers have to follow a curriculum.
Yeah.
So everyone has to just know. And that's what's great about the internet is that you see a bunch of different people and a bunch of different perspectives. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I've learned a lot, and I would like to I would love some of the influencers out there to be, if I'm president, I would love to see like Ms. Frazzled be in charge of education. I would love to see some of the people I follow Native American wise, figure out there were peace treaties that we broke back in the day.
All of them.
Yeah. And I don't know what those are, but they do, because they were educated on that. And they could tell us, and we could go back and see what we could honor. And
the first step is acknowledgement. And we're not even at that step, which is embarrassing.
I acknowledge.
I know, but like we as a nation need to acknowledge it.
I think a lot of
Biden
people,
did
but
a
we're
huge-
ignorant. We're ignorant to every culture is
Sure.
ignorant to another culture.
You got to learn. You
You gotta learn.
You don't know these things.
And that's why I don't know people. I don't know anyone. I know my friends. I know who I can trust. It's almost ridiculous. I don't trust the politicians. So I would probably choose, we're karaoke DJs, so I would probably choose our friends, because I know what they're good at, to be in charge.
Yeah. And here's the thing, right? And I assume that a lot of politicians also like to surround themselves with people that they trust. And this would be exclusive to people or politicians acting in good faith, which some do. I believe that there are politicians that really do try. And then there are some politicians that are acting in bad faith, and the power and title is more important than anything else. And that is the dangerous spot.
And I think like a lot of people don't realize, okay, so when I refer to Republicans and Democrats, I'm an independent, but when I refer to Republicans and Democrats, I'm not talking about the working class. I'm talking about the people in Congress and how they vote. And this means no offense to any of the people, but the Republicans, that side of the room, they're afraid. They're very afraid. So even if they're not on the list or their nose is clean, they still are probably getting death threats.
Well, they're associated with it.
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter. It's a slippery slope, right? Because in this two-party system, it's basically impossible to get elected without associating yourself with a party affiliation. Nonpartisan roles are very rare. I believe they're almost exclusively judges in most states, and they are elected or whatever. They're in place in a nonpartisan affiliation. Even if, like, for the Supreme Court, they are technically nonpartisan. They don't run as a party member. You do an evaluation and you understand, like, their leanings or their political leanings, right? And that's how you would, if you were the administration in charge, that's how you direct and whatever, nominate a candidate, right? But the nomination process and the evaluation process should theoretically suss out judges or people in these positions if they are proven incompetent. However, since our administration is so influential over the party, and essentially these guys are rubber stamping the process, it's essentially bypassing any critiques regardless of what the media is covering and even what the members believe behind closed doors. They feel like they're powerless to do anything about it, which is awful because they aren't powerless, right? Actually, they do have power. They have legal authority to fight back against the administration, and I don't know what is going on and why they feel like they're so powerless. And whatever that is, whatever the administration is doing to keep them in check is clearly working to the administration's favor. But the reality is our system is essentially being short-circuited because of the overreach of the administration. And at the moment, I think the structure itself, the infrastructure itself, still intact. If another administration took over, this could be fixed. I think Biden had an excellent opportunity after the first Trump administration to resolve, and Biden was a good guy. But I think and I understand his approach. I think we all just wanted to move on. But unfortunately, we had a huge opportunity to essentially do some pretty excellent things, and we thwarted those 4 years, or we wasted our time in implementing an agenda when we had the opportunity.
Name one thing that Biden did that was good.
So during COVID, the recovery, the GSA thing with the money for grants or for redevelopment, that was a big deal for us personally. We were doing the house flipping business, and that grant gave us
a lot.
Yes, I agree.
He did a lot, but he didn't toot his own horn. The only way you could find out what Biden was doing, was to pay attention.
Yes, you are correct in the fact that the biggest problem with Biden as a person was that he said the important points in a whisper. I don't know. It was the weirdest.
Very humble.
It was the weirdest thing, but it was like everyone else was boasting about all this stuff, and he would say the important stuff like in a whisper.
And I think that's important.
It was a cute mannerism, but the message was lost amongst the general population because he never yelled to the rooftops about how great he was because he wasn't an egomaniac. So as a politician, Biden was great and definitely did a lot. Unfortunately, he could have done more. We've discovered...
Everybody could have done more. As a society, we could do more.
Considering how much Trump has done in the first 12 months or his first 11 months of his administration...
It's a lot.
It has been shocking, deeply disturbing. We realize that if Congress and if the administration wants to do something, they can literally do it overnight. They can approve laws, approve this, approve that, and all of this weird, it takes 6 months or 9 months or any of this garbage that we've assumed is the normal process time. No, all of that can be short-circuited. All of that can be bypassed. If something needs to be done, it can happen like within hours. If it really needs to happen.
Okay, but I am blown away with how many things that he does that are super illegal, but people go for. And then when it finally gets in front of a judge, they're like, absolutely not. Unless that judge is in his pocket. And if you watch The Apprentice, not the TV show.
The judges that are in his pocket.
The Apprentice, not the TV show, the movie, is a documentary, a light documentary, up to his first wife.
Docudrama,
And I was actually, and I'm in Missouri, I'm actually in this theater. There aren't very many people in here. And I can hear the conversation with the people, like
right behind us? Or
they were in front of us, like 2 rows in front of us.
But you could hear them.
And after the movie, they were like, I lived in New York. This is it. This is exactly how it went. And if you watch that movie, across the board, you guys, I don't care what your political beliefs are, watch it. It gives you insight to what is going on right now. That stuff, what he learned back in his 20s, is still what he's doing now. And the other thing about him is you've got the child trafficking, the whatever. You got all of that. We don't believe women. For some reason, he's super powerful. We have pictures of him with P. Diddy, and P. Diddy was doing his own thing, and he was trafficking what? Weapons, drugs, and children. But now the fact that Trump pardoned that guy, big drug dealer, where is he from?
El Salvador, or no? It was...
I want to say Venezuela, but I don't think that's right. We're at war.
Anyway.
But he just pardoned... See, this is why Tom's here right now. Is he's going to fact check it.
Okay.
But he just pardoned this huge drug lord. Huge. So why? Honduras. Can you read to us a little bit about that?
Yeah.
And I really would like to just get back to normal and back to basics of this. There's so many things. I want Congress to feel free to vote how they want to vote without pressure from the inside. And the thing about being an independent is I think both sides would listen to an independent because I'm listening to them. agree everything over here. I might not agree everything over there. We could write it so that everyone agrees. I think we'd get a lot more done. And I also want to try running without a ton of campaign money. That's what I want to do, because it was never intended to be this much money. And I love Kamala, but I still to this day get these requests in my email over and over again to give $5 here, $5 there. I don't know if that's actually her or somebody else. I don't even look at my email anymore because there's so much spam. There's so much all this other stuff. I have 40,000 unopened emails, because sometimes if you open an email, you get a virus on your computer. It's a headache. And then sometimes you open it. My real estate agent. I had one that looked like it was from my real estate agent. They knew where I lived, everything. And it's just a disaster. Luckily I married Tom. He's into tech, he's into security, cybersecurity.
It's all about context. It's very simple. Were you expecting the email? Yes or no?
No.
And if the answer is no, it's probably spam. It's very simple. That's it. That's all we got. Computers don't know the difference. They don't understand context very well. They're getting better. AI is definitely helping. But at this moment, our best and most basic check is whatever I'm getting, is it something I was expecting? Is this a follow-up to something that I asked for?
Yeah.
Something like that. But if it's out of the blue with no context, then it's probably spam, especially if it's coming from an authoritative source like the IRS or government agencies. They are not going to email you. They will send you a certified letter. If it's real, you're probably getting in a certified letter. And if it's really real, you're going to get process served. So you will get the real notice in an actual physical form. If this is something you must know, they will spend the money to make sure you are aware of the situation. So
that's something I would like to do.
Yeah.
Is these scam artists on the internet who are doing this so people don't want to look at their email. They don't want to answer their phone.
Sure.
If you don't recognize the number, don't answer your phone. Do not. And you have to give your social security number to a credit card. But if you type that in on the computer, anyone can get it.
That's not necessarily true, but I understand what you're saying. There's a lot of technologies that protect the communication over the wire to where you can be assured that what you're connecting to is what you intended to connect to. However, that is what's called communication in transit. But once it's at the endpoint, then it's on them to store that information securely, which clearly has not been the case. Sometimes these will be sitting in an unencrypted database for decades or not purged, because it seems like the safer way to approach these kind of things is you use a transitory time frame, right? So you need it's what's called the minimum knowledge, right? To get to the objective. You need whatever the bare minimum amount of information you need to get to the next step, right? Whatever that is. So like in a credit card application, you need your name, your social, address, whatever the minimum is to then make a determination of this person's credit worthiness, right? So you just ask for only what you need, right? No more. Once you get it and you've made your determination, you then disregard the data, right? It's credit ratings, too bad, denied, and then of course in the concept of like credit reporting, there is minimum storage requirements based on whatever the policy is, either from the company or from the government. And so you do that. You say, okay, we have to keep these records for whatever amount of time. And I don't even know, but I'm thinking 7 years. But then after 7 years, you should purge it. There is no reason to keep data that you are not legally required to keep longer than when you should legally require it, because that will obviously keep your storage down, even though these are tiny text files and the cost of actually having that much storage is negligible. But It's still data. It's still bits. It's still so I would say to minimize your exposure is you do what is legally required, right? Especially in data retention. Follow the law and what it is, and responsibly purge the data once that time frame has elapsed. And don't just leave it there. Don't just ignore it. Oh, it's like we could delete it, but we don't. No, it's delete it. Actually make an effort to purge old records, because who knows what's in there, right? And if you aren't legally required to retain it, don't retain it, because that can potentially create problems later. If your old database, like your encryption, even if it was an encrypted database, right? Maybe there's a new vulnerability that's been discovered in the encryption, right? Or the encryption is no longer strong enough to modern standards because a new supercomputer can crack it.
Can I backwards again?
So I mean, there's that. Yeah.
Can I go backwards? Let's go back to infrastructure and the plane thing. So we talked about planes. We talked about why it isn't the struggles that we're having. But I really wanted to get to trains. That's where I wanted to get to. Trains are the least amount of strain on pollution, correct?
All right, let's see.
For transportation. But, he's looking it up. That is my belief. But, here's the thing. These cars are taking coal. I've seen it. Moved to Missouri, tons of trains. They're taking coal uncovered. Washington State, they would never let that happen.
All right, so obviously, as you can imagine, or maybe quite funny, the most efficient mode of transportation is walking.
Yes.
And cycling.
But you don't want to walk to 4 hours.
Agreed. However,
4 hours isn't going to
so
get
if you can walk, move to a place that is walkable to where you could go places that you can walk to. Suburbia isn't necessarily a
right,
great
but
place.
if you're trying to get
sure,
if you're trying to get halfway across the country,
sure.
But see, the problem with the trains is it takes 3 days opposed to
so walking and cycling.
4 hours.
All right, I'm going to give you the list, and then we can break it down. No, it's fun. It's fun.
No.
Break down walking and cycling. Next one, trains is the lowest carbon footprint because they can go medium to long distances. Electric vehicles. So even a diesel train is more efficient because the amount of energy that it takes to move all of that tonnage, right? Because a vehicle on rails has a lower rolling resistance than if you ever seen these trains, right? Every single one of those cars could be maybe a 53-foot semi-truck trailer, right? Which each one of those would have its own motor if it was on the roads, and then it would have a driver, and then you would have to pay for that driver to eat somewhere. You'd have to fuel up that vehicle and whatever. Getting a train car that has thousands of these essentially semi-truck loads full of product to wherever it needs to go or close to where it needs to go, and then use the trucks to then do what they call the last mile delivery to the warehouse. Makes a ton of sense. So anyway.
But the point of me talking even about the coal.
Yeah.
It's about the coal. It's about the environment. It's about what could happen if that tips over. We know trains tip over, and the effect that it has on the environment. Ultimately, of course, the big goal to be president is world peace. Yay! And that would mean stopping the wars, stop selling weapons, keep the military intact, but have the military help put things back together. They could go over and whatever we bombed, whatever we destroyed, I feel, whatever we broke, we should fix because that wasn't right. That wasn't right. Think of it as a child. If one kid breaks another kid's toy and just doesn't buy a new one or fix it, that's not nice. That's not kind. Whatever we broke, we should go in and fix and then up ourselves because we're better than that. And with all the chemicals, so we talk about the environment, but then we have wars. All of a sudden, does anyone know that bombs and stuff affect the ozone layer? It affects our water, it affects our oceans, it affects our fish, it affects our children. Starving, dead, bad water. It's horrible. And we have to realize, you guys, that it's not our country versus their country. It's the leader of that country versus the leader. It's not the civilians. The civilians should not be getting killed. Hospitals should not be bombed. Schools should not be bombed.
Yeah.
The problem is the leader. To say that Jews hate the Palestinians, that's just leaders getting in your head. That's what that is. You have to take these leaders out because they are crazy. And I'll tell you what, I've said this my whole life, or until I was conscious. I wouldn't ask someone to do something I wouldn't do. I'm not about to go in the military. I'm not about to let my kids go in the military because I don't want a flag coming home telling me they're dead. If they want to dodge, I'll help them dodge. Because most of these wars are unnecessary. Now, I appreciate our vets.
Yeah.
But if I'm president,
Let's
that shit's not going to happen. To the best of my ability.
Let's use our forces appropriately.
Yeah, and we don't need bombs. We have lasers.
We have freaking laser beams.
We have laser beams. We don't need to bomb things. We don't need to destroy the environment.
No.
Sorry if I offend someone, this is the dangerous thing to say, but here's America, and here's another country. I'm not going to mention a particular leader because I'm already on thin ice talking about this stuff. But with all the tracking that we have, we know where that person is. All we have to do is send a laser beam or whatever. And now if they're underground, that's trickier, of course, and that's probably where they are, or going to be.
Yeah.
There's whatever, but the point is you could go in and destroy things without bombs, without toxic gases, without...
Okay.
Oh, wait, we have to have toxic gas?
We've tried this. Afghanistan's a good example. It's notoriously difficult. So we have tried the war on terror as a concept has been terribly difficult because these networks are underground. They're designed to hide in plain sight, and that's terribly difficult.
But aren't we part of the terror?
We are.
We are. We can start.
We
stuff.
kind of our own either
Worst enemy.
Our own arrogance or our own attitude toward the international community is such to where terror organizations can essentially recruit very effectively against Western thought process because it is exclusivity and exploitative for non-Western nations. So I can totally understand why a non-Western nation would feel offended by just the sheer arrogance of the West in general. And to assume that capitalism is the only way to do anything is very arrogant. That approach is the only way to be successful in any venture is ridiculous. And the reason we believe that is because we have been taught to believe that. Because it's very important for the citizens to believe that capitalism is the only way for this to work, because capitalism relies on the people to participate. The problem is now, obviously, the working class very much participates in the economy and capitalism. But the people that own the means of production don't necessarily participate to the extent they used to participate. Back when their companies were smaller, they had more competition, they had laws that kept them in check. They could not be a monopoly.
Yeah.
And now it's like we have monopolies, we have
duopolies.
We have duopolies, we have maybe triple choices. A good example is cable internet, right? For the majority of Americans, that's the only choice you have with home internet, for high-speed internet. It only until recently, cell phone companies really were very scared to get into the home internet business, which is weird to me because they already had a network of cell towers, and LTE and 5G is really fast. So for most people, your internet to your computer was slower than your Wi-Fi or your cell connection to your phone. So a lot of people ended up tethering to their phones, and now it's like the cell phone companies have started to realize or market it, let's just have internet service over our own network and just provide that to your house. So that's what they're doing now, but for a long time it was like there was no alternative to cable internet for most people. And then of course doing the fiber rollouts for AT&T or other fiber providers, fiber to the home. I think a lot of it was due to issues with pole access. Somehow in the 70s, the cable companies were able to tack their cables onto the telephone poles.
Can I cut in with a quick story?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so my folks, my ancestors, I think, bought the first house, their first house. Okay, we have a farm. And out in Pacific, Missouri, very small town. Sometimes they don't even show it on a map, which is ridiculous because it's a great town. It's got a lot of history, and a lot of people think it's racist, but it wasn't. Maybe now, I don't know, but they're very pro-Trump out there. But back in the day, they fought for the indigenous people, the black people. You could own land back then. You were welcome. They were farmers. They traded. But that's not the point. The point is, and my Uncle Bob, he didn't even know there's a difference between black or white until he was 14. That's better than now. That's way better. But anyway, so the point is, with the electricity came about. They were one of the last ones to do it. They are further out than town. And finally, the story goes, they brought all the equipment out for electricity and said, you figure it out. You know what they did? They did figure it out, and they got everything up and running. So I don't remember my point. I guess I'm thinking of the other day. We're digging up our backyard because we're rearranging things. My daughter, we need to get a wheelchair accessible for her. I'm like, and we got this big hill that's like totally unmanageable. But the thing is, we're digging up our whole backyard. We are like, our neighbor and us, one of our neighbors on the other side of us, we're the only two that have wires above ground. Is that correct? No?
This whole block is wired up. It terminates there.
Oh, okay.
It goes that way. It comes
well,
from one
okay,
pole.
my point was, if we're digging it up anyway, why don't we just bury the line? And if they have a hard time getting through the fence or whatever, just dig it up and they can place it, put some dirt, some fill over it, call it a day. Because I just really believe in buried lines, and I know it's expensive, but if it was our expense, I know. But that's where that came from. That's where that electrical came from. But yeah, think about how privileged white people are, that we're uneducated and ignorant, and now everyone hates us and thinks we're the root of all evil. I'll tell you what, if we'd grown up knowing what you guys knew, things would be different. Much different. And so we have to really focus. The way we fix that is make sure all our textbooks had this stuff. Now, granted, U.S. history. Think about U.S. history. You've got, what, a year or semester? There's 12 chapters in that book. And you only have a certain amount of time to teach it. So it would be difficult to add all that information. But I think people should have choices. Do you want to do U.S. history? Do you want to focus on Native American? What do you want to focus on and make it more specialized? But you could have that elective in high school, because not everyone goes to college because it's expensive. So again, if we had free college, we'd have more educated people who understood how other people lived. There would be less racism, and we wouldn't have the issues that we have now.
Yeah, increase the quality. So here's an interesting thing that I read into was there are countries that don't allow private schools, right? They just don't. They cannot get a legal charter to operate in that nation. Private schools illegal.
Then why would that be? Why would
the
they do
reason why they did it this way is because The problem is, right, the elites, the people that can afford to go to private school, essentially pull their kids out of the public system so they don't get exposed to the normies, because that's the reason. That's why you do it. So, by making private schools illegal, right, you cannot get an education from this nation without, it's like you could do whatever you wanted, but you're not getting accredited, is basically what I'm saying. The nation is not accrediting this education. It has to be public. The reason this happened was so that all incomes were represented in their geographic region, right? And then also, it was not tied to the income of the tax base of the people that live there. So a lot of our public schools are based on the zip code. We have a good district, we have a bad district, right? This came from a national system that equally distributed the same amount of revenue to all schools. So all schools had the same operating budget. So everything was standard in its operation.
I have to excuse myself.
Okay.
So you explained it to them.
So basically all of these things had the operation, and you were forced to essentially lift all of the boats so that the standards were the same everywhere. And then that forced that made parent engagement higher and just a bunch of side benefits to the experience. We are going.
Okay. So I want to go back. I want to go back again. We were talking about Biden, and we were talking about what he did. He did a lot. It's just a lot of people don't realize it. I wrote to him a bunch, and I know he doesn't necessarily read my letters. I know there's people that read them, but they still put the seed in his ear. And anytime I didn't understand something, if I misspoke, they would say, no, this is because this is what we are doing, blah. And I have 5 letters from him. I was on his text thing, all right? He was the first person. 6 a.m. in the morning, I get a text, happy birthday, Rachel. Yeah, that says something to me. So, whatever. He's a good guy. I don't want to hear how boring he was. The whole thing with that debate with Trump, where Joe's going, that's because of the stuff that was coming out of Trump's mouth.
Yeah.
He's asked a question about policy and what he wants to do, and he goes off on something completely different. So you've got Biden, who is the political game, and he talks about policy, and that's what he's done his whole life. And then you've got Trump. It's like, I looked like that when I was watching it. I was like, he had the same face on him. And there is a rumor, I don't know if it's true, but he was on, someone slipped him, or his Ambien or something. He was on some sort of sleeping medication. That guy had been up from 6 a.m. in the morning, and those debates don't start early. That's a long time. And what was that thing where he was just all fired up? He was like,
State of the Union. State
of the Union. Yes, and one gal came up to him at the end and she said, oh, my mom's a super fan. They thought the mic was off, but she gave out the number. But I'll tell you what, they showed him giving the call, and everyone was, oh, it took him such a long time to get up there. He was greeting everybody. He was shaking hands. Hey, how's it going? That's good. That's very good. He's a nice guy, and hateful people in positions of power, that's not good, because you're setting an example for the entire country. And I don't know. If you're racist, if you don't like another group of people, I urge you to do research beyond what you learned in school, and do research, whether you go to the library and pull out a book. I don't read a lot, I don't have time. The thing I would read is Archie comic books, or something a book that has just like little anecdotes in it, I have other things to do. I am busy. And that's another thing, this Project 2025 thing. How many pages was that? 900 and something? I wouldn't have read that. I wouldn't have had time. And I don't fault these Congress people for not reading it. It screwed us because they didn't read it. Screwed us big time. When I know that's their job, but that wasn't fair. That set all of us up for failure, and that was the intention. So if I'm going to do something like that, if I have a plan...
Now keep in mind that Project 2025 has been worked on for 50 years. This has been
That's ridiculous.
Long-term plan.
Yeah, but still, to put someone and say, hey, you have to read all this and then vote on it?
No. Okay, so you're thinking of the Big Beautiful Bill.
Oh, is that what
Project 2025 is essentially an outline for
well, how many pages is Big Beautiful Bill?
Hundreds of pages.
Okay, that's not okay either.
Yeah.
If I want something done, if I want to have a law or whatever bill put in, I'm not wasting anyone's time. That's going to be maximum 2 pages, 14 font.
Here's the
I don't know if it's 14, but it has to be readable. It can't be like this.
I would say, here's the thing. Maybe what we should do is not allow writers unrelated to whatever the title of the bill is.
They try to tie stuff in.
Yeah, they throw in things that are unrelated to whatever it is. Like a lot of this stuff, the Big Beautiful Bill was passed because it was budget. It's like it had to be passed. So you could argue that it all was related because it requires money, but that should maybe be further restricted to like strictly financial allocation.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like laws related to the programs that they're funding.
And they don't do that?
They do not. And that's the thing. So what the fund it
what
does
a
is
mess.
I know. So it's brilliant. You can just throw in essentially a new law and then finance it and fund it. Just throw it in there. And here's a new thing. And here's the money related to it. And here's all the stuff. But since it has a money part, it's a budget thing, right? So this is a big problem. And maybe what we should do is we should force the rules, or I'm sorry, the financing elements of a thing separately from the creation of the thing. I don't know how we would do that.
I could tell you how to do that.
Yeah.
Because that's... Okay, so I was PTSA president. They call it PTO out here, but I was in Washington State when I did. I was PTSA president. So we had to do budgets for the school and how money was going to be spent. And it was the motto of the PTSA is every child, one voice. So it was the adults advocating for the kids and what was best for them. And you couldn't spend money on something unless it benefited every single child, except for like 5th grade graduation. But every child is going to go through 5th grade graduation. And then field trips were looked at separately. But you had, okay, but see, we're keeping it simple. Popcorn Friday. How much did it make last year? How much? And sometimes we threw Popcorn Friday in and it hadn't been there. Actually, Popcorn Friday it was the bake sales. It's how much money are we going to allow to put expenses in for Popcorn Friday? How much is the expense going to be for bake sales? Movie night. What is our budget? The dance, the whatever. We had a ton of activities while I was there. They went away afterwards. But the point is we had to know how much Popcorn Friday was. How much do we make? How much do we not? And that goes to the next year. So even if you had, like for one of the dances, Tom did the music for one of the dances for free, did the karaoke for free, but you had to mark down what he would charge. So even though he did it for free, you would put down $300 because they would have to know how much to budget for the next year, because maybe Tom isn't going to be around to do that. The point is, as though that it's as simple as that sounds, it didn't take us that long to figure it out. Maybe an hour or two. Now I understand that we have a lot more work as the U.S., but to put the budget, I didn't even know that part of the Big Beautiful Bill was the budget. because there's so much. So the budget would be separate, and we would do that. And if there was a bill, 2 pages, people, and if it's beyond 2 pages, make it a different thing. And you should be voting on one thing, not an entire. I think there was the abortion thing in Missouri, and it tacked on transgender stuff, and it criminalized. It was terrible. Anyway, we did vote to keep abortion in this state, but as soon as it passed, because the people voted for women's pro-choice, even though it passed, the government has gone back and is trying to figure out how to overturn it. The governor. So when we have state people going against what people voted for, and they've taken it back, and the judges said, no, you're rewriting it wrong, we don't like this, we don't like that. And a lot of times these bills are written, in a way that isn't clear.